Today's episode is all about dice.
Welcome to DiceGeeks.com Tabletop RPG Show. Level up your RPG campaigns by filling yourself with stories and knowledge. Explore topics from archaeology to film history to writing to literature and much, much more. This is DiceGeeks.com Tabletop RPG Show.
Welcome to the show. My name is Matt, and I am your host. This is the podcast where we learn how to become better game masters and role players by filling ourselves with stories and knowledge. All right, guys, I have an incredible interview coming up for you, as always. But first, if you would like to help out the show in some way, you can like it, rate it, review it, or subscribe to it in your favorite podcast player. Those things help the show out immensely, and I would greatly appreciate it. Also, if you have the means, you can support the show financially on Patreon at patreon.com/dicegeeks. You can join all of my other great patrons. Also, I create resources that help people cut down their GM prep time. I have an incredible array of books available to help weary game masters all over the world. I have created the Books of Random Tables, which are books that help game masters make decisions and answer questions and fill rooms on the fly with creative details. You can find them at Amazon.com, DriveThruRPG.com, and my own website, DiceGeeks.com. I have random tables for fantasy, for science fiction, for cyberpunk, for modern, for Wild West, for post-apocalyptic, for steampunk, and more. I also have several books of dungeons that help you always have a dungeon at the ready, so play never slows down. All right, enough of all that stuff. Here's the interview. It is my pleasure to welcome two guests to the podcast today, Kenny Moore and DJ Shewmaker, both with DragonSoul Dice. Kenny, DJ, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having us.
I like to ask first-time guests how they were introduced to tabletop role-playing games. Kenny, why don't you just let us know how you first learned about Dungeons & Dragons?
College, actually. Most of my friends in college played. I like to hang out at the local game store, and my first introduction to D&D was actually someone graduated and left a campaign, and I kind of filled in for them, and it was a lot of fun. I haven't played much since college, but the two campaigns that I did participate in were very memorable.
Yeah, that's awesome. How about you, DJ?
I actually got introduced kind of late in life too. I was in college myself, and one of my buddies kind of introduced me to D&D. I was going through kind of a rough patch in my life, and it was a great way for me to kind of bond with my close friends at the time, and I got started on 3.5, and it was right before 5e came out, and at the time I think they were calling it D&D Next, so I got on with 3.5, and I was hooked. I've been hooked ever since.
Yeah, and what do you think it was that just hooked you about it?
So I've always been, it was funny because my friend was like, hey, he was trying to gauge if I was going to be able to play, and if I was interested in that kind of thing. He's like, what do you think of like fantasy movies? And I was like, well, what do you mean? Like Lord of the Rings or what? And he's like, it's like, yeah. I said, oh, I love them. He said, oh, okay, cool. You ever played like games? And I was like, yeah, I've played plenty of like board games. Like, yeah. Have you ever played D&D? I said, no. Is that like Dungeons and Dragons? He said, yeah, you should play with us. And the mystique surrounding fantasy and creating a world with someone, I think, is what just hooked me immediately. The idea that I could create a character and be a part of a world that wasn't like my own, and be a different person entirely while creating a story with someone was just immediately hooked me, So I'm so happy that he brought me into it, and he's been, one of my closest friends ever since. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I obviously I have similar feelings about when I first discovered role playing, right? Just being able to, like slip on another skin and drop into some other world or other place. And it's just, I don't know. I just don't think there's anything quite like a tabletop role playing game in those regards.
And it's a melding of minds too. I think that's one of the most interesting creative processes I think I've ever been involved in, and I've been involved in a lot of creative processes over the years with various things I've done. And D&D is one that's just it's special. It really is.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know, Kenny, you said you haven't gotten to play much, kind of recently, but DJ, you've been playing quite a bit, right?
Yeah, I don't think I ever really stopped. I even moved away from some of my friends. We live in different cities now, and some of my friends moved from mid Missouri, where I was going to college. They ended up moving out to like Chicago, and I moved west to Denver area, and we still play online, using Roll20 and various other like plugins, D&D Beyond, and we actually do our video on Discord. So we play regularly, and I run. Right now, I'm only running a single campaign, but we're playing in several at one point. So my crew, shout out to my crew. We're actually playing on Thursday nights. So next Thursday we'll be returning to the Archivists campaign. The homebrew.
Yeah. Oh, okay. No, that sounds awesome. Now, when you were first introduced, did you take to running games pretty quickly, or did you play a while before you became the dungeon master?
I probably played for a full year. He took me and a couple of my friends on my, he DM'd for us, the guy that introduced me to it, it was probably about a year. And it was 3.5, so it was a little bit different, but it's he ended up killing one of the characters off, and things slowly kind of fell apart. People moved away and things happened, but he takes it hard to this day. He thinks he killed that campaign. And I said, no, man, that's a part of the game. I mean, sometimes characters die, and that's just a part of it. But we played for a year, and then at that point is when I was like, maybe I could try my hand, maybe just do a one shot. And that's when I tried my hand. I was horrible at first. I was absolutely horrible. I will never forget the first time I tried to plan everything out. I probably prepared for 20 hours leading up to the event, and it was just bad.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we all got to start somewhere. And I mean, I tell the story on the podcast all the time. The first time I played, I was 9, and I ran my first game the next day. I ran my mom through a dungeon, and I didn't know any rules or anything. I was just making up stuff. Mm-hmm. And I didn't realize you were supposed to that the dungeon master was supposed to, be this whole, huge different position than players. Although I learned pretty quickly. And then, I learned some bad habits really quickly, I think. Mm-hmm. But, like you were saying, the first time you did it was horrible. I mean, it was, that's where, we all have to start somewhere. And I went through every kind of phase of prepping for, hours and days, and, getting shocked when my players turned right instead of left, and just telling them, no, you can't. I know I said there was a hallway there, but you just can't. You can't go there yet. Or
missing clues. I remember the first time I had a guy, and I had this guy that he was supposed to see down an alleyway, and I hinted at it, and he saw him, but then he just kept walking, and I was just at that point I was baffled. I didn't know what to do.
Oh,
I was like, you were supposed to see the guy, and that was supposed to lead you down the hallway, and it didn't work out. But I've learned how to deal with that a little bit better now.
Yeah, absolutely. I did so much goofy stuff, but fortunately, I think I had a better deal because I was a kid, and the stakes were not high for me at all. Yeah. Just my buddies or whatever when we were like 9, 10, 11 and 12 or whatever.
Yeah, definitely. And that's most of my friends started playing when they were younger too. Like, the guys that I play with now have been playing since they were probably that age. And we're all in our early 30s now. So, they've been playing for decades where I've been playing for, since 2014, the beginning of 2014 or end of 2013.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, but I think it's awesome that so many more people are, coming back into the hobby or returning to it or discovering it for the first time. Because there were definitely times when I would have said it was dying out, that, nobody's role playing and, everybody's just going to be playing Magic and card games and nobody's going to role play. And
that's Kenny's world. He plays a good bit of Magic. So
don't be dogging on Magic.
No. I'm not dogging on Magic. I mean, Magic saved Dungeons and Dragons, right? Because TSR was going out of business and Wizards of the Coast, since Magic is a money printing machine, was just able to snap up Dungeons and Dragons and really saved it. So no, definitely not dogging on Magic. It's just I'm older than you guys, so I remember that 1993 when Magic came out. It just looked like nobody was ever going to play role-playing games again. Like everybody was just like, oh, I spent all my money on Magic cards. Yeah, like $300. I just spent it all. Like everybody was just buying Magic cards. And
I feel that a little hard.
Yeah. But
close to home, Kenny.
It hits a bit close to home. I'm not gonna lie. There may have been a few months in college where I debated upon putting off rent payments just to make one of my decks a bit better.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's
not the best financial decisions by any means, but
no. But sometimes hobbies can do that to you. I've looked at role-playing game books before and thought, do I really need to eat lunch? Is that the
Yep.
For the next week.
Yes, exactly. But now on the podcast, I interviewed Dennis Detweiler, who was one of the original artists for the original Magic cards. And that interview is really a ton of fun because he talked about going to the first convention where they launched Magic, and him and the people working the booth thought it was going to be a failure because the way they had set up their decks or something, they had done something wrong, and they thought it was going to be, and it was like really slow and clunky. And they thought, oh man, well, it was fun working on this or whatever. And they said 90 minutes later, they're like, we're sold out and we're making like orders, like we're taking more orders. And it was just like, then it was just on from there. So that was a really cool interview with him.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's really cool. I'll have to go back and listen to that one.
Yeah. So Dennis Detweiler, he's done like a million other things. He's an artist, writer, novelist, game designer, all kinds of stuff. So
wow.
The history of Magic the Gathering is it is quite interesting, and of the games that I've followed, like I think it and D&D probably have the most overlap in terms of like the player base.
Mm-hmm.
So anytime that I've ever had a group of friends that I play Magic with, like the majority of those people also play D&D or sharing stories, and it's gotten even more interesting, like with the last Magic set being D&D themed. The last few FNMs that I've been to have had quite a few like D&D players that are new to Magic, like coming in because of the new theme set. Yeah.
It's Forgotten Realms now.
Yep. Yeah. The Forgotten Realms.
It's cool.
And it's been kind of nice, like, sitting across the table from someone that's picking up Magic the Gathering for, maybe not the first time, but for the first time in several years, because there was an overlap there. And, I've always felt that the feeling that you get when you're playing the game is similar in both places. It just Magic the Gathering kind of has a shorter play period. You sit down across from someone, you finish your match, and then you either move on to the next one. It's a different play style, but I felt the same playing Magic as I did participating in a campaign. You're sitting at a table full of people, having great conversation, laughing, making jokes, and you're kind of having fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And, like I was saying, like at the time I should have realized that, Magic would only increase people's interest in Dungeons and Dragons. I mean, that was just, of course it would, right? I mean, it looked exactly like Dungeons and Dragons almost, right? Like, I mean, and now, of course, being able to, since they're the same company, obviously now they can just, fold in the Forgotten Realms and do whatever they want with that. And it makes a lot of sense that there's overlap. Yeah.
They did it the other way around too. I mean, isn't that where Ravnica came from?
Yep.
Like they had, I think maybe is that Theros too? Both of those were
possibly
Magic settings. So
Ravnica and Theros were both started out as planes and Magic.
Yeah.
They were trying to get more Magic players into D&D, and that didn't work out so well. But Forgotten Realms seems to have done a pretty good job of getting D&D players interested in Magic. But it can't hurt to have common themed elements. I mean, most of it is fantastic from a purely storytelling perspective. You have a really fleshed out architecture in which to use as the basis for any sort of game, not just Magic the Gathering as a card game, but for D&D, or I mean, heck, I've even seen people try to build board games and other things, just like homebrew, around different planes and mechanics and themes that come from Magic the Gathering blocks.
Yeah, absolutely. And and like you're saying, it just adds so much stuff, because I mean, there's new races, there's new player character options, and all kinds of stuff and setting things that just come from all of those places. And as most good, dungeon masters and role players, we just can grab little bits of those and bring them right in. It's like, oh yeah, you can play that race from Ravnica or whatever. It's like, that's cool. Yeah. So
the thing I always find interesting about like D&D players, and like anytime that like I've talked to someone about like DragonSoul Dice, everyone wants to share like their next project, like their next D&D project, whether that's them designing a Candyland campaign, or some campaign that's built around the idea of like Pokemon but D&D style, where Charizard would actually kill you. Like there's just all sorts of crazy things that people are doing with their D&D campaigns, and I love to sit down and just like hear them just dump all of the different stuff that they want to do with it out there, and realize how amazing of an architecture that D&D has created for gameplay, that it can be so well adapted to these different ideas.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, that is always a very dangerous question to ask a dungeon master or role players. Like, oh, so what's your campaign like? You usually
there hours later.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, you should make sure you don't have to run in like 5 minutes.
Yeah. Hanging out at a daughter's friend's birthday party, and you're sitting over there by the pool just trying to make small talk, and 2 hours later it's like, I should probably make sure that no one's drowning.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my gosh, yes, because if there's one thing we want to talk about, it's our campaigns.
Nope.
Yeah. And so, DJ, what are you running, man? You mentioned the homebrew world, but like, we don't have like 3 hours, but maybe
I can. Let's see if I can.
5-minute thing. Can you do it?
I might be able to give you the elevator pitch. So I created just a small setting in a little world that I created, but basically it's called the Archivists, and they have been inducted. This group, their party, have been inducted into a clandestine organization that basically tries to save the world from artifacts that may or may not have been placed, in different parts of the world on purpose, and have detrimental effects to different parts of the population. So a pretty standard like go find the artifact campaign, except every mission they gain a little bit more information about who the big baddie is, and there's some much more information about kind of the history of the world and how that ties in that they aren't quite. I mean, they're aware of, and I gave them this information to start with, but I don't think they have the idea yet of how that ties into the campaign itself and kind of the masterminds behind some of the bad things that have been happening. So.
Yeah. No, it sounds awesome. It sounds awesome. And yeah, I would normally ask you like more questions, and then I would realize it would be midnight or something.
Right. And then you'd have some editing to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I know when I go to conventions and I'm like working my table where I sell my books, people will come by, and if it's slow, I'm just like, so what are you running, man? And then it's just like, oh gosh, I got to go do something. And it's like, it's just like an hour later or whatever. Yeah. So, I did mention, and I could go on totally. I'd tell you about mine, but I'm actually taking a break right now. So I'm getting to play, which I usually run everything, awesome. But I'm getting
Isn't it great to play every once in a while?
Yeah, it is. It's kind of giving.
Tell me. Yeah. So I got to play recently, just for a one shot, but I created a really cool character. I actually hadn't ever played a necromancer before. We're playing a campaign where it allowed for it. So that was my first time ever playing a straight necromancer. But what are you playing? What did you play then, or what are you playing now as a character?
Yeah, well, we're doing a friend in our game group, he decided to do like it's the Forgotten Realms, but it's post-apocalyptic, so it's called the Shattered Realms.
Okay.
And there was some kind of magic apocalypse or whatever that he's doing, so he's mixing in some elements of Eberron into the Forgotten Realms. Nice. But so here's what I'm playing. This is where the players can go for hours. So I am actually playing a kind of an uplifted or an awakened ape, so like just straight out of like Planet of the Apes kind of thing. Yeah. And what I used, my DM let me use the Goliath as a template, so I just used the Goliath as a template, and then I made him. And so his family was, he like grew up in tribes, and his family was slaughtered, and he was captured, and he was thrown into gladiator pits. So he is a gladiator, and he has escaped. And of course, the big bad of the whole wasteland is the Dragon King, and that's whose arena he fought in. So now he's kind of out there, kind of working with some just people in the wasteland, kind of building up a resistance to try to bring down the Dragon King. And so he is a fighter champion, but I thought it really fit his character, so I picked up 2 levels of Bard, because he kind of plays like a flute, and he has this melancholy kind of feel about him. And
it almost feels like that folk hero background almost. Like, I know you said gladiator, but with the Bard in there.
Yeah. He's got a little bit of that to him, but yeah, his background is the gladiator, but he's got kind of this melancholy about him, and so he plays like a flute that's made of bone. He picked it up in his cell and carved it when he was in the gladiator cages and there. And nice. I'm at a crossroads, and my DM said he would allow it, but we just had this kind of huge thing where we're in the Feywilds right now, which I think we got stuck in a time loop, which was an amazing. I was like, our DM did a great job. So we were just repeating like the same hour over and over again, and we had to break this. We had to break this town that had been trapped in this time loop for like 500 years. We had to break it out of the time loop, and so we have encountered the goddess of time, and my character is going through a lot of changes. And I talked to my dungeon master about it, and I think so. We're level 8. I think I'm going to now go straight 12 levels of Warlock to the Goddess of Time.
Oh,
because and the Undying Warlock because of time, right? So
yeah.
and I think that's what I'm going to do. I know it's a little crazy because I have like so many abilities. It's like ridiculous, and it's a little kind of hard to play, but it works so well for the story. I think I'm going to do that. So I think I'm
That's
going.
awesome.
Yeah, and because now, because like he's not very smart, but like if he gains some of these abilities, he can like up his intelligence and stuff, because he's going through kind of this transition where he's realizing some of his allies have been falling, and we had some characters die and go off, and he's realizing that maybe he's the only hope of the wasteland kind of thing. And it's been a really cool evolution, because at first he was just the big dumb muscle that followed everybody around. So it's been really awesome. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's a great build. I love that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like I said, a little crazy. I have like all kinds of like abilities. Like my plan at first was just like go all fighter. And then I was like, oh, I'll do 2 levels of Bard. And now I'm like, what am I doing? Like 3 classes? Am I insane? I think it's a little crazy, but
a lot easier in 5e to do multi-classing than it was in 3.5. That's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. It is way easy. I just forget all my abilities. That's
I mean, it's still a difficult thing to keep track of. I just, at least you don't have to take a bunch of, penalties.
Yeah, absolutely.
At least not as many.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. That's where he's at. And yeah, we've been playing for a while now. And our DM keeps talking like we're going to wrap up, in the next few months. And I'm like, I mean, at our present rate, we will finish in 2 years. Do you realize that? And he's like, right. Oh, well, I should probably speed up a little bit.
It's going to level you up 2 or 3 times before.
Probably. Yeah, probably. Who knows? Yeah, I know. We'll probably level up quite a bit here, hopefully, and get to some high levels, which I haven't got to do much with, like, 2 high levels. So that'd be a lot of fun. All right. Well, I've been rambling, like I said. How long was that? That was at least like 5 minutes. No, it was only about 4 minutes of me rambling about my character.
You're good.
Okay. Yeah, it is my show, so I can just keep going. But well, now I did introduce you guys as from being from DragonSoul Dice. So we kind of just left that hanging out there a little bit. Why don't you guys just explain what DragonSoul Dice is, so the listeners can understand what you guys are involved in?
Sure. Yeah. So DragonSoul Dice is a company that kind of came into creation as a pandemic project, I guess you could call it. We make liquid core dice. And if you've never heard of liquid core dice, go to our website, DragonSoulDice.com. We make dice that have special combinations of pigments that we use to create various effects. We've seen a lot of other companies try to create similar effects, but so far we've seen a lot of very basic implementations of glitters and fluids and those types of things. And when I started working on this project about 1.5 years ago, I'd come across the idea while looking for a gift idea for my brother-in-law, who had just gotten into D&D. And like I said before, almost all of my friends are into D&D, and being involved in the culture for so long, I know how important dice are to a fledgling D&D player. So getting him his own fancy set of dice, I thought would be a really cool thing. And I came across someone's idea for liquid core dice, and they were being sold for some like $100 and some odd for a set. And at the time I was just like, that's really cool. I think I could probably make these. And yeah, so my wife put up with me experimenting in the garage for about 6-9 months, I guess. And I got failure after failure after failure and experiments. And I finally created a handful of dice that worked, and they looked great. I thought they weren't perfect, but I took them into my local game store just to kind of get some feedback. And I was just like, what do you guys think of these dice? And they're just like, we don't think you're leaving here with them. And
hopefully they didn't pull a gun or anything.
No,
I think they paid. I think they paid.
Oh, okay.
They paid. Yeah, I walked out of the store
A lot better.
with a handful of cash, and
Nice.
I got into the car, and my wife Callie was just like, "So, what did they think?" And I was like, "They gave me all this money."
So
I think
I was gonna say, like, if you don't know, like you said, liquid core, but like you have to kind of see them to understand. There's literally liquid and pigment and swirly sparkles inside of this dice. So we create various sizes as well. So they're beautiful.
Yep. We kind of grew a bit organically, I guess you could call it. It did start out as a garage experiment project, and after the first few successes, we started kind of selling some dice to buy better equipment to make better dice, and then my wife got more involved, and then we brought in two of our friends, Alex and Sam, because they were kind of looking for something to do during the pandemic as well, trying to stay sane. And just the idea of making something together really appealed to us. And then we were talking about the idea with DJ and his wife, who's my cousin, and discovered that we had some mutual interest in in the area. And he kind of pitched in, and he really helped us out when we had the idea to kind of launch a Kickstarter to get our to really get production off the ground, so that we could kind of start mass producing our dice, at least at a scale at which we could eventually keep a website stocked.
Yeah. And thank you for, jumping in there, DJ, and kind of letting us know liquid core. That's what we're talking about. And they're very unique. And now, before I ask you some more kind of specific questions, you did touch on something there, kind of along with tabletop role playing and tabletop role players. There seems to be a kind of obsessive tendencies around dice and holding lots of dice and having many dice. I am a victim of said dice, hoarding kind of plague or something as well.
You're a dice goblin?
Yeah, I have a lot. I every once in a while I'm like, man, I think I should get more dice. And my wife is like, you have like 200 in that bag there. What do you need them for? And it's like, I just need to like run my hands through them. I don't even know. I don't even know. So the like dice Scrooge obsession. What was that?
It's like the Scrooge McDuck of dice. You got to have
exactly
full of them.
Yeah, I do.
I just swim in your dice. You don't have enough yet.
Absolutely. I just want a big room where I can swim in dice. Yeah, that's it.
That's the dream.
Yeah.
I had ethical concerns at one point whenever this company was getting off the ground, because I legitimately questioned whether or not we were part of a problem after I sold dice in a shady back alley to a guy smoking a cigarette.
just don't tell my wife, man.
He's got him like hanging from the inside of his trench coat in the alley, just like showing them to people.
Like a beat up van just driving around town.
Yep.
Stopping outside game stores out back.
Well, I do drive a van. I did show up with a van at a game store, and I was selling them to the store, to some people at the store.
Yeah.
And like I walked out, and I'm walking in my car, and I'm happy because I sold some dice, and I just hear this raspy voice from like the side of the building. It's like, "Hey, dice guy, you still got that blue one?" And I was like, yeah. And I walk over there, and he just hands me a wad of cash, and I like pull the dice bag out of my thing, and I hand it to him, and I walk by, hoping that I'm not going to get mugged for the rest of my dice.
Or busted by some cops that think you just sold them something else.
It felt illegal. I'm not going to lie. Like I felt like maybe there was a problem, and I was contributing. But
We've since come to terms with the idea that we're offering a product that people want. So,
yeah, but if you do have a problem, you could call the local addiction hotline, and
To be found at
maybe we should put a link to that on our
DragonSoulDice.com.
Sure, yeah.
or go to DragonSoulDice.com and
And-
look at our wares.
Yep. Just peruse what we got available.
Yeah. Just wait until the cop asks you what's inside of the dice, right? Like, what's in there?
Well, and then we have to say it's proprietary. We can't tell you.
Yeah.
And then they get a little upset.
I think we joked in the beginning that would be the real way to make money, right? Just use the dice as a cover for smuggling.
Oh man!
Gosh. Well, there you go. Okay. Well, you heard it here first, guys. No. The dice are now just a front for running some kind of something. I don't know what.
So we definitely don't want people doing that. Do not crack open your dice.
Oh, yeah, don't do that.
Yeah. It'll be the role-playing game version of Breaking Bad or something going on.
Oh man!
All right. So, but Kenny,
it is a badge of honor, though. I think that you talked about people having like so many dice.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it's that, and then like whoever has the most, and then whoever has the best dice that they can bring to the table, or their best set of dice.
Oh yeah.
I take pride whenever we are at a store or we're set up and we ask some people like, do you like dice? Like, oh, I have plenty of dice. I have way too many dice. Like, but do you have one like this? And you roll one across the table and they just drop everything. Right. And then they just like walk over and they spend the next 15, 20 minutes just touching and rolling every single one we have.
Like sweat breaks out on their forehead.
Yeah. And then they, give us money and they walk away with one.
Yeah. Cause I had, before I joined the team, before I joined the company, I had several pounds of dice. I have a lot of dice.
Yes.
That being the case, I didn't think I needed any more. But let's just say I have much more than I did before. I have many more dice than I did before that. So I think it's an obsession that people they can feed their D&D obsession in some way with purchasing even just a die. A cool D20.
Oh yeah.
I think that's us. They think that that's a small way for them to feed that need instead of going and spending a bunch of money on a book they're not ready for or whatever. Yeah. Maybe just going to the store and they see a cool die that they want to pick up. Yeah. So I think that's where it starts, and then it just kind of compounds. They're feeding their obsession, and then in a small way, or in some cases a much larger way,
a bigger way. I wonder if anybody's ever looked into that, why role players are like obsessed with dice. But I think you're right. There is something to having the coolest dice at the table back when we could see people in person and things, but having the coolest dice at the table, or it's just like, I don't really feel like dropping $50 today. I have a ton of books, but oh my gosh, this die right here is really cool. And it's
you can never have too many either.
Exactly.
Like I think like about all the dice I have, and I still every time Kenny comes up with a new color, a new design of some sort, I'm like, you got to send that to me, man. You have to get that in my hands, because I got to take photos of it. Being on the marketing side, like I'll be like, I got to take photos, I got to take video, but we all know that it's dice.
We recently got a shipment of new pigments, and some of the color combinations that have come out of that, they're color shifting, and some of our new colors that are coming up that we'll be releasing soon. They're coming your way. We got a package ready to go for you, DJ, but I can't wait to get them into people's hands and to get pictures and videos of them up on the website, because the dice that we've done and we did for our Kickstarter, I'm really proud of them. I really love the colors, and they look like garbage compared to some of the new stuff that I think we're going to be putting out there here really soon. And it's just because it's just so much you can do with like those color shifting pigments that you can get out of them. It's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and that sounds just awesome. And the dice really are spectacular. When I first saw them, I was really blown away by them. Well, I had never even heard of a liquid core die. I just like, what? Like, what is this? What is this thing? I didn't know I needed them.
Yeah, and then you saw them. Yeah, and the new colors, like Kenny said, we have one up on the website currently. Dragon's Blood, and then maybe by the time this airs, we'll have a couple more that we've been working on that we'll have live here soon. So check our website, and you should see some new colors, and those color shifting ones. They really are extremely dynamic with the way the light hits them. They'll change colors entirely, and that's all because the Kenny is going to probably correct me here because I'm not the technical guy. I'm the marketing guy, but we don't actually, color the resin. It's the liquid inside that has all of the color. Everything else is just clear resin that surrounds the liquid. So, the fact that it shifts makes the entire die change color. It's pretty cool.
Wow. Yeah. So yeah, Kenny.
I was going to say there's just a lot of experimentation went into it, like combining different pigments, particle sizes. I could go into the chemistry of it, but I was told to protect proprietary information as much as possible. But there's certain color theory that you can apply whenever you're mixing colors together, and most everyone is taught subtractive color theory. You mix watercolors, you put yellow and blue together, you're going to get green, right? Mm-hmm. You mix red and green together and you're going to get mud. But when you're dealing with things like pigments, like certain iridescent pigments, you can mix a red pigment and a green pigment and create a really interesting orange, because it operates on a different color theory, much like how pixels on your screen operate on a different color theory. And it's just some of the things that you can do by mixing different pigments and different grain sizes of pigments. It's kind of interesting. And I haven't seen many other people playing around with that from at least a liquid core dice perspective.
Yeah, and definitely not on the scale that I think we're doing it. I think there's some people out there that might starting to get the idea of it, maybe, but not that are selling them like we are.
Yep. Yeah. It's real easy to create like a good glittery liquid core and then create different color dice by changing the resin color, because then just whatever glitter you put inside of it is filtered through the colored resin die. It's a lot harder to get specific effects when the die shell itself is completely clear and see-through.
You can definitely protect your proprietary information, but if you started talking about chemistry, it would certainly go over my head. So there would be no danger about that from me. But there could be a listener out there who would start taking notes. But Kenny, I did want to follow up on something. I know it was a little while back, but I wanted to follow up. You said you saw some, and then you thought, well, hey, I could make those. Like, that just like occurred to you, like, oh, I can make resin liquid core dice in my garage. That thought.
If you knew me, that wouldn't be as odd of an idea.
That's not a surprise to the people who know Kenny. I think the number of projects that he's done over the years, he could probably expound on that if he would like to. If it doesn't embarrass him, but
that is definitely in my character sheet as a person.
Okay. You dropped all your skill points into making stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, well, I mean,
he's a tinker.
I have what I call tinker time, and
he's a rock gnome. You're a rock gnome.
Yep.
I got far too much joy out of purchasing a lab coat recently for when I'm mixing resin and some of these things together.
Do you have a pocket protector?
I don't know. I do have a lab coat.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I had to buy one. I ruined a pair of pants by pouring silicone all over them once. It was much rather not go through my jeans that quickly. But yeah, I thought maybe I could make them. I thought it would be fun to try. You never know unless you try. And there is a lot that goes into making a liquid core die that isn't obvious up front. Mm-hmm. So the engineering problem behind it is more complicated than you would think. Like making a die that doesn't explode is actually harder than it sounds. And we've put a lot of time and effort into making sure that they don't crack, they don't explode, they're not going to leak and ruin things, that the chemicals inside of them are safe and stable. Even coming up with something that just has the right feel is difficult. Viscosity and density and all those different factors play into how well the pigment moves and how well that stays in suspension, and making sure that it doesn't react with the pigments that you put in there. Every pigment and glitter is made with a different base compound, whether that be an aluminum oxide or titanium oxide or, some other mineral that is the base for the pigment.
Needless to say, it helps that I'm the only one that didn't go to an engineering school that's on our team. So they can fix these problems. They can identify and find solutions to the problems for actually creating these dice that I'm just astounded at every time they talk about it.
I can't take full credit for it. My brother-in-law is actually a chemical engineer, and he's also very much obsessed with the idea of having awesome dice. So he has been more than willing to pitch in a few great suggestions here and there to save us time and to kind of help point me in the right direction when doing some trial and error, trying to fix various problems.
Yeah. Yeah. And as you were kind of diving into the process there, you were saying words that I think I know the meanings to, but I don't really know
all the words on their own. But.
Yes. But in those sentences, I was losing it a bit.
I apologize.
No. And it's just so incredible.
For a living. So a year ago, I would have been in the same boat. This was a learning experience for me.
Now, I guess I would be remiss if I didn't ask a question. So they're resin, liquid core filled dice. How do they roll? Do they roll well?
Very well.
They're actually a lot less likely to roll off the table.
They like skid.
Well, no, the some of the kinetic energy from the roll actually does get transferred into the fluid.
Yeah.
So the dice do have the fluid does create kind of you can almost call it like a sandbag effect. Mm-hmm. It's not terribly noticeable unless you roll it side by side with like a solid resin die that was casted in the same mold.
Yeah.
But you'd get a couple extra, side, like go a couple of extra millimeters on the table if you roll them both side by side. Okay. So if you have small children, I still don't think you should give them, an expensive liquid core die to roll off the table on accident, but the chances of them rolling the die off the table are a lot less likely.
Right. And I think, Kenny, you said when you first started, you did do some testing on the consistency and making sure that these are still, randomized, number generators, essentially,
Yeah, I haven't taken it to the point of cataloging thousands and thousands of rolls. But for each mold that I've created, I have tested the dice that come out of them to make sure that it's fairly random within, a few hundred rolls, writing them down and then doing some averaging on them. I do think that is something that we could potentially, like everything is a process of improvement, as you improve a product. But we, as of right now, don't have any issues with the dice being weighted to one side or another. Right. But I do think we could make them more perfectly balanced so that we could say, from a mathematical and from an engineering perspective, there's no physical difference, at least in the density. And that's something that we've worked towards when making the dice, is to make sure that we have a cohesive material through and through. So you don't have the cores actually changing or offsetting the weight based on their position within the mold as they're being cast.
Wow. Well, that's just amazing.
And I'll say, from a rolling perspective, I was surprised when I first got my hands on one. I was expecting them to be like, I don't know, like it would teeter on the edge or something. Like the liquid would maybe like send it over a roll or two more or something like that. and it doesn't seem like that. Like when you roll it, it just rolls almost like it's just a heavier, die. Your D20 just rolls like it's just like a slightly heavier. Like if you've ever rolled a metal die before, it's very similar in that regard. It's not like the liquid makes it rock back and forth or something like that.
Yeah.
Yep. And they are a bit heftier than what you would feel if you had just a solid resin die. Like they do feel a bit more substantial.
I mean, it sounds awesome, and of course, I've seen them and I've rolled them, and so they are really cool. I mean, we're coming up here on time. I've been talking to your guys' ear off and rambling on about my D&D character for like 5 minutes during the middle of the episode. But where can people find your dice, and maybe what does the future hold for DragonSoul Dice?
Yeah, so you can go to DragonSoulDice.com. You can find all the stuff that we have available. We have a few different colors, as far as the future goes, we're looking at adding more colors. As you heard from Kenny, there's a lot of testing going in. He's always working on something new, we're probably going to be. I guess the main goal is. One of the bigger goals that's upcoming is a more serious Kickstarter campaign, crowdfunding campaign next year, towards the beginning of next year. So that'll be kind of new colors and potentially full sets. So
nice.
We will be putting out, or I will be sending a lot of experiments over to DJ to take pictures of and post. We may not sell all of them on the website. Just depends on how much each of the different experiments, how big of a batch we're able to get out of each of the experiments. But we will be doing, giveaways here and there for some of those dice, and we'll be using these experiments as kind of the foundation to figure out, maybe what to offer or what colors to build our next Kickstarter campaign around, because we'll want to do a bit more market research this time around, now that we have DJ on board, and now that we've had a year to kind of show what we have off to people and get an idea of what people's preferences are.
Yeah. All right.
So you can find us DragonSoulDice.com, Instagram and Facebook too. Those are great places to find really cool videos that I put together for everybody.
Okay. And I will. Oh yeah.
Well, I just wanted to say, if you have an idea for a die and you want to maybe commission a liquid core die, or have us try to create something unique or something special for a specific purpose, I love experimenting. I love trying to come up with a specific die to match either a theme or a color palette or
character.
A character. Yeah, I mean, I love taking inspirational photos and trying to come up with a die based on that, or something that would look good too. And we may not always have inventory up on our website, but part of the process of experimentation and trying to come up with new products can be benefited from. If anyone wants to reach out and ask about commissions, we might have availability to do those.
Oh, well, that would be awesome. That would be awesome. And so, I will make sure that I put links to your website and to possibly some of your social media and that in the show notes for this episode at dicegeeks.com. And also, if anybody out there would like to commission a die or see what DragonSoul Dice has to offer right now, you can just head over to dicegeeks.com, check out the show notes for this episode, and you will find the links and the information there. All right. Well, Kenny and DJ, it was awesome having you on the show. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you so much, Matt.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
All right, there you have it, guys. I really hope you enjoyed my conversation today with DJ and Kenny. I learned a lot about liquid core dice, which I didn't even know was a thing until I learned about DragonSoul Dice. So, as I mentioned in the episode, I have provided links where you can learn more about DragonSoul Dice. Those links can be found in the show notes for this episode at dicegeeks.com. Check them out. All right, guys, if you want some free stuff, head over to dicegeeks.com/free. You'll get 10 free dungeon maps. You'll never miss an episode of this show. And each and every Friday, you'll get an email update from me letting you know what is going on here at Dice Geeks. All right, guys, I thank you so much for listening to the show. It means a ton to me that there are people out there who take the time to listen to me yammer every Wednesday, and I appreciate that so much. So I thank you so much for listening, and until next Wednesday, keep gaming!